The story begins with Yuan, a stinky otaku who was excited to go to an anime event in China. On the way to the plane he is transported to a fantasy world and gets super excited imagining that he will be the great hero of this world, the protagonist which saves General. But when he arrives at a magic academy to take the admission test and start his adventures in this new world, he discovers that his magic power was very weak, achieving the incredible feat of being smaller than a hair. But how he still had magic. An old man appears to him while he was lying in a tree lamenting his life, and this old man invites him to be a gardener. No, he's not going to plant flowers and water them. That's something else. This gentleman explains to him about the existence of fairies in this world, which according to him are beings that overcome all the magic present in this world. After explaining everything, this gentleman leaves a fairy seed with Yuan and gives him the mission or challenge to make the seed grow. He tries several times, but he simply cannot. At a certain point in the anime he is attacked by a strange monster woman who, if I'm not mistaken, is a succubus, a master CE. Don't you remember? No, I don't remember. If you want to know, go watch the anime. He thought it was all over when he was attacked by her, but at that moment he discovers that his attempts to make the fairy seed sprout were not in vain because the fairy is born and saved. He was a succubus. The problem is that she saved him to kill him with her own hands later. KKK. She gets very angry that Yuan doesn't remember her, indicating that she already knows him from somewhere. But how would he remember if he never saw her before? Keep watching and find out. I don't think I even managed to disguise the attempt to increase the retention of this video. But that's not it. Trust me. She says she was sealed by him and stayed there for 1,000 years, and the only koisa that kept her sane was the desire to kill him with her own hands. But for some reason whenever she attacked him, all the damage from the attack came back to her. In addition, her movements were mirrored. Whenever Yuan moved a part of her body, she moved too. She gets really pissed off for him touching his chest, which makes her touch hers too, and she wants to kill him even more. But a strange girl who claims to be the director of the academy where Yuan was rejected appears there and hands him a book telling him to keep his fairy. He recites an incantation that causes her to be trapped inside the book. After that she talks to him personally in another place where she offers him an exchange. He enters Shou Academy and becomes her student, and in exchange she would give him the book along with 3 more fairy seeds, and he accepts this proposal. This one barely got a waifu and already wants more, although the waifu is wanting to kill him, so I understand. The scene changes for him lying down hugging the book. Don't ask me why. At that moment a voice comes out of the book and talks to him, saying that to control the fairies he needs to conquer them first. He also explains that they weren't born fairies but were transformed in fairies from humans, beasts or other female beings. She goes back to saying that to control the fairies he needs to conquer them completely, and enters his cell phone to make his life easier, and he doesn't need to carry the book all the time. The next day he's walking around the gym on his first day of class saying it was time to get back on top since the director herself invited him to join the gym. A student decides to be hot and tries to humiliate him by throwing a crystal to measure magic power on the floor for him to pick up. He picks it up and the crystal lights up completely, showing that now he had the element of water and wood. In addition, the crystal breaks so powerful that he was, and soon after that he arrives at the mine most popular in school and asks her out, but she runs away in embarrassment, and he wonders why he did that, saying that his body doesn't react the way he wants. After that he talks to the book manual that explaining says that he absorbed the body of the succubus and the fairy. That's why he has great magical potential for water and wood, but because he absorbed that succubus now everyone will feel attracted to him regardless of gender or age. The book's manual is that voice that came out of the book and spoke to him before, just so you don't get lost there. That same guy who tried to humiliate him earlier invites him to a duel in the middle of a fight class, and the teacher makes him accept. Before the fight the princess of the kingdom appears there and decides to watch the fight. This boy attacks Yuan with everything. His fairy talks to him and asks him to release her so that she would finish him off easily, but Yuan refuses, and after concentrating he manages to use his wood element magic to attack, but after doing that out of nowhere he faints and wakes up in another place, a place all destroyed with desperate people, and walking a little he sees a child that looks a lot like his fairy asking for help. He wonders if he was sent to another world again and helps the girl. At that time 2 guys arrive wanting to capture and sell her. They throw the Yuan away and carry her away, but Yuan steals her from their arms and leaves running. He ends up being caught and beaten. While he was picking up, the girl thanks him for protecting her, and he notices that she is very similar to his fairy. He wakes up and the book manual explains that he was not dreaming. That was the memory of his fairy, who is called Mo Faye. I almost forget to say her name. And the manual says that these memories are the key to conquer his fairies and make them listen to him. him. He asks if Mo Fei was human and that was a memory of her, and the manual says yes. He contacts her on the cell phone and tries to gain her trust, saying that he didn't summon her in the fight against that little guy because he didn't want to use her against her will, but they don't even have much time to talk since two succubi show up in the infirmary wanting to do something weird with a person lying there. Not exactly what you're thinking. The scene shows the guy all skinny, and their boss the calls saying they would act tonight. The scene cuts to him in his room eating ramen. He hears a strange noise outside and hides behind the door thinking he is a succubus. The door is opened by someone, and when that someone enters, Yuan catches him by surprise with a punch in the face that makes the person pass out. There's only one problem. That person is the princess. After seeing the mess he made, he puts the princess passed out on his bed and sleeps next to her. When he wakes her up, gives him a stick thinking he did something to her, but he calms her down by giving her some noodle for her to eat. Noodle is the power. There's no way. He wonders if the head of succubi saying they would act had something to do with the princess, who his name isn't Chi, and at the same moment the succubi appear. They're looking for him. They hide underground, and shortly before they are found, Yuan holds the three with his wooden can, giving him and Chi time to escape. He says that this is a game of hide and seek, and he tells her to hide in the forest, so he summons Mo Fei to fight for him, who advances towards the succubi and using several fire attacks doesn't give them any chance. They try to escape, but they don't. They manage, and when they were about to be defeated, their master appears there. Instead of saving them, he kills them, and the manual tells Yuan that he is a level 8 knight and that in the current conditions Mo Fei has no chance of defeat. So he asks if she has any ideas, but she says that he summoned her to die for him, but that even after dying he wouldn't forget him and would come back to take revenge, and he once again doesn't understand why all her fury. Yuan tells the manual, which I just found out is called Shao Yi Zi. I'll just call it Shao. Think of something. She explains that only by raising the spiritual relationship with her fairy would it be possible to increase her combat power, and that to improve this relationship he would need to go to the spiritual world of fairies and change Mo Fei's memories. But he had no magic power because he had spent too much before. So the princess appears there saying that she was a sorceress with spiritual power and shares magic with Yuan in exchange for ramen for 1 year. The succubus master then attacks them with a sword technique, but Mo Fei runs out and gets in front of the attack, avoiding hitting him. So the transfer of power is complete and he manages to enter Mo Fei's memory. There he sees her as an adult and killing some henchmen who came after her. He tries to talk to her, but when he touches her his hand crosses her, and to explain, Shou says that maybe there was already a version of him in that world. She tries to buy a sword from a guy who looks extremely similar to Yuan, but he says it's not for sale. She leaves, and the next day she sees him playing an instrument in the street. He talks to her, but she closes the window and ignores him. The scene cuts showing him protecting a little girl from a bunch of bandits. He takes several blows from them, but he doesn't give in for anything and continues to defend with a smile on his face. When one of the bandits was going to give him the final blow to Mo Fei appears there, and just seeing her they run out. As thanks he gives her his sword and she leaves. Yuan, analyzing everything that has happened so far in memory, says that this guy is using persuasion strategies to deceive Mo Fei. He cites several examples of things he did to manipulate her, like staying in the rain when he could stay in a covered place. If he seems like a good guy who plays an instrument for people to hear and protects others, but according to Yuan this is all manipulation of him. And also according to Yuan, Mo Fei was already in love with him, almost falling out of her mouth. He says there's a 90% chance he hired those thugs to beat him too. The anime goes back to the real world with Yuan still inside the memory and the princess with almost no energy to give him. This mysterious knight who seems to know the princess from somewhere once again focuses on her and Yuan, but Mo Fei does not let them get hurt and even goes so far as to leave him pierce it with your attack, only to use a technique to trap it with blood spikes. Back in memory, Yuan spent more than 1 hour following the two and cursing this guy in every possible way. He asks Shou if there was a way for Mo Fei to see him, but she says no. So this memory guy asks if Yuan had already cursed him enough. Yuan is surprised that this guy can see him, and he says it's because their souls are connected. That is, they are the same person. It was obvious. Yuan asks what he did with Mo Fei, but he tells Yuan to ask himself. He says, what would you do with the protagonists of a game, as if he only sees Mo Fei as an object or something. He says that Yuan does the same thing, but he replies no, and that he would never do that to her because this is not a game. He leaves and shows up at Mo Mo Fei's house. She arrives scaring the guy thinking he was a murderer behind her, but no, he was the only one who brought her delicious things to eat. The scene cuts to the two in a port talking. He says that in a city like this, a place like that, is the only opportunity to have peace. She asks how he knew about this place, and he says that his hobby is traveling, tells some of the places he traveled and invites her to go live in a beautiful place on the other side of the sea. The scene cuts with her killing a guy. Apparently she denied it since walked into town. She bumps into him who says he's going to her house to make something for her to eat. She hides her blood-stained sword because she didn't want him to see what she did the other day at her house. He was there doing at lunch once again and says he made a recipe from his family. Yuan watching says he should have made another recipe, and he tells her that he was also making that recipe. She asks if he hated killing, and he replies that he did, but that he understood why she did that. She tells him that in the past someone saved her, and that she felt from him the same affection that that person had shown when he saved her in childhood. The scene cuts with her going to get more a murder contract. She asks for double the amount because she wanted to leave town with that guy. The guy who gave her the target then says that the rumors are true, that she was in love, and also says that this guy would do harm to her, that happiness didn't come that easily. She leaves there and shows up to this guy showing that he bought 2 tickets for them to leave there. She says she had one more job to do before going, and he tells her to find it at the lighthouse 3 days later. Passing the 3 days, she gets there but doesn't see anyone. She waits for him for 3 days and 3 nights, but he doesn't show up. Yuan then tells her to wake up and remember when she saw him in childhood, but that doesn't work because she can't hear him. So a guy goes up there telling her to get down as fast as possible because that was a trap. The anime shows her surrounded by several bandits, but she says she wouldn't leave there. Then the tower she was in is attacked by a cannon and she falls wounded, but she gets up thinking that he was nearby and had been hurt. She goes after him, killing General on her way. Some bandits there ask her to drop her gun and surrender if they don't kill the girl they took hostage, but she drops nothing and goes after them, killing everyone and saving the girl. She then hugs her saying that everything is fine, but the girl stabs her with a knife and he gets up with a smile on his face. That's when that guy appears smiling. She crawls towards him happy to see him, but the little girl who was with him says that she really was easy to kill, and that's when she realizes it was betrayed by him. A flashback shows this guy talking to a group of bandits. He says that if they followed his plan, Mo Fei would be his, and the west zone of the city would be theirs. Their boss asks what he would get in return and he says a sword would be fine. She gets up and walks to him with a frown on her face, but is stopped by the head of the bandits who approaches this guy and threatens to kill her. His answer to that is to kill everyone there, but in the end the truth is not he who kills but his fairies. Mo Fei tries to get back up, but he says it's not a good idea because she had already lost a lot of blood and could die, but she says that if she dies she would take him along. She tries to attack him, but one of his fairies defends him. She keeps attacking him until her sword breaks and she falls to the ground. At that moment he says that he would help her to live, and he does that, turning her into a fairy, and while he does that he says she takes revenge on him. Yuan asks why he would do something so cruel to her, and he replies that he is simply playing the conquest game, just like Yuan does in his games where he wants to be powerful and have a big harem. This one guy asks if he even thinks about the feelings of the characters while conquering them, but Yuan keeps denying being like him. The environment changes and Shou shows up saying that this is where Mo Fei is sealed. He uses his intelligence to think of a way to save her that involved him sticking something in his chest, because he remembers that when the fairy seed that Mo Fei was born sprouted, he had been hit in the chest. This gives the idea of him doing something to hit his chest to release her seal, but Shou says that this would not be a good idea and that if he dies there he would die in the real world too. He decides to take a risk and takes a sword, starting to pierce himself, but he can't go ahead, saying that even though he wants his body not to move. He drops the sword and feels very bad for not being able to act the way a protagonist would act, but looking to the side he sees a piece of the sword stuck in the ground. He has the idea of trying again, but in another way, this way being to climb the tree that was sealing it and throw himself from above, falling on top of the sword and going from the base. He climbs to the top, kisses Mo Fei and throws himself up there, happy for finally taking action, but not sure if it would work. The story continues with Mo Fei waking up and seeing Yuan dead. She starts to shake herself and manages to break free from the seal. Walking towards him she removes the sword stuck in him and remembers everything that happened in memory, including him warning her several times that that guy wanted to hurt her even though she couldn't see him. After realizing that he wasn't that that guy, she starts crying and asks him to come back to life. But after thinking that he would never again waking up, he gets up and starts to leave. At that moment Yuan grabs her foot, saying that he had not died and that everything she said just now was very sweet. She is very ashamed and draws her sword in his direction, but he says who was joking so as not to take a sword. Shou appears and says that he successfully conquered Mo Fei. He then talks to Mo Fei and tells them to try the technique of merging that he saw in the fairy manual. She says that first they need to get out of there and return to the real world. Then Yuan calls her and the two begin to merge. The result of this fusion is an absurd transformation, leaving Yuan extremely overpowered. He begins to fight that knight who has none chance of defeating him. The two are exchanging blows, but Yuan was just playing with him. Shou then tells him to stop playing because his transformation was already over, and he uses an attack he learned in a game to finish the fight. The impact of this attack causes an earthquake that can be seen even from the school. Yuan is curious about Mo Fei's fires and touches them but gets hit right away. Shou says that she got irritated because of the fairy horn, it's like it was their intimate part, and that now she was mad at him. The director appears there and gives the fairy seed she had promised him. He warns her that that knight he defeated wanted to harm the princess, but she says she already knew everything and asks him not to spread anything about what happened. The episode ends with her giving an evil giggle as if she was planning something.